Never. And it's sad to say that we have to say this to a person, but he deserved to sit in there. Ain't no changing. You sat there and you waited in that bush for my uncle to get out the truck. You took an innocent life for no reason. There is no excuse for that. No excuse. It's sad to say that your daughter's suffering, but guess what? His kids are suffering as well. My grandmother suffered as well. She had to bury her youngest child.
And we just heard from the loved one of the victim, from the murder victim who was taken from this world on November 26, 1997, by this man who had the nickname of Danger. Now, he is having his Act 23 169 hearing out of the state of Connecticut, which is a special hearing that Connecticut affords anyone who is under the age of 21 the right to an early hearing. And you heard me correctly, not under the age of 18. You see, in Connecticut, they recently passed legislation that said anyone under 21 is considered a child, and they're working on making it age 26. So think about that. Anyways, we'll unpack this hearing with all the details at the end. For now, let's jump in.
So as previously noted, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Daniel Santiago, ID number 2503357. Mr. Santiago is serving a sentence of 37 years flat, no probation to follow, for manslaughter in the first degree with firearm, assault in the first degree, robbery in the second degree, and larceny in the second degree. There is victim input in this case. There's also an offender accountability plan in place that has been reviewed and shows that he's completed the following programming, which includes anger management, embracing fatherhood, good intentions, bad choices, tier 2, and intensive aftercare. He is also currently maintaining a job assignment. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score in the RT falls within the moderate risk for recidivism. Mr. Santiago, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you need to parole, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I want to thank the board for this opportunity to be seen and heard today. Thank you. I just want to start by saying that I am sorry for my actions on November 26, 1997. There are no words that I could say for the pain I had caused this family. Parents lost a son, brothers and sisters lost a brother, kids lost a father. I am sorry for taking him away. I would like to express my great remorse and sorrow for my actions. I take full responsibility for those actions which caused the loss of a life. I am truly filled with remorse. There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about my actions and how they affected this family. I am sorry. Mike, I am sorry for shooting and injuring you, for the pain that I had caused you and your family as well. I am sorry. I have known Barrick since I was 12 years old. On Monday, before the shooting, Barrick credited me a half ounce of crack cocaine worth $500. The deal was that after I sold it, I would pay him. On Wednesday night, I was down at the projects drinking and smoking marijuana and PCP. I seen Barrick come out the white building across the street from the projects. Barrick said, "Where's my money?" I told him that later on I will pay him. There was a Lincoln Navigator parked in front of the white building. There was a guy named Mike that was with Barrett. He was driving. After Barrett asked me for the money, he then got into the passenger side and Mike drove towards Park Street. But it stopped and came in reverse back to where I was standing. Mike got out the driver's side and started to come at me. Barrett got out the passenger side and he started to move towards me. I got scared and went for the gun in my waist. Mike started to confront me about me playing with other people's money. I seen Barrett reach for his waist. I got scared and I thought he had a gun. I started shooting at everything that was in front of me. I didn't know if I hit anyone until there was a warrant for my arrest. I then turned myself into the Hartford police. That was probably the best decision I had made in my life by that time. I'm sorry for what happened, and I take full responsibilities for my actions. I was making the wrong decisions in my life back then at the time. I put myself in the wrong place at the wrong time and made the wrong decisions and bad actions. Being removed from that life, I had learned to be responsible for my actions. I would never go back to that way of life. I wish that I could go back in time and change what happened. Over the past 27 years, I have had the time to sit and reflect over my life. I am not the same 18-year-old person I was at the time of my crime. I have grown, I have matured, and I am a much better person, especially with my decision making. Now I am able to be much more productive and giving back to society by mentoring troubled youth, volunteering my time in the shelters to help the community the best I can. The things I have done over the time of my incarceration has really been beneficial to me. Anger management, good intentions, bad choices, tier 2, embracing fatherhood. I have learned many skills from them programs, which I use on a daily basis, such as listening to others, taking criticism, and being open-minded. I am now able to communicate better. The 2 programs that benefited me the most was tier 2 when I did it the first time, and good intentions and bad choices. I was abusing alcohol and drugs, and I thought I did not have a problem. I was in denial, making bad decisions because of my addiction. Now that I have been clean for 27 years, I see that I had an addiction. The program helped me to be clean and stay clean. When I get out, I will continue by going to AA and having a sponsor and having people to call when I need help so I don't make bad choices. I have received my high school diploma and took multiple programs, carpentry, commercial cleaning. I have also been working in industry program here at the Mandoo facility as a painter in the spray booth for over 12 years plus. We do work for the Department of Child and Family as well as for the University of Connecticut and many other organizations. I also train other inmates in my field of work, develop my work skills in other areas of the program. I plan on opening up my own auto body shop, and those skills will be beneficial to my success. So I could be much more productive if granted the opportunity to be released. I would like to thank the board once again for the opportunity to be seen and heard, and I do promise that I will be a productive member of society if given this opportunity. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Santiago. We appreciate that you took the time to write all that out. You've covered a lot of details for us, but we have prepared questions for you based on the documents that we had available and that were submitted. So we will begin those questions with my colleague, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Santiago.
Good morning.
Yeah, just want to be clear on a couple of things. One, you were originally charged with murder. You went to trial. Jury found you not guilty of the murder, but lesser charge of manslaughter 1. That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. You applied for. You had got over 60 years sentence. You
Yes.
applied for sentence modification. You got that in 2022.
Yes.
23 years off your sentence.
Yes.
You then applied for a commutation in 2022, but it was denied.
Yes.
Okay. This was, having read this, this was obviously very drug-related, a drug-related situation.
Yeah.
Story that you're telling is a little bit different than what I've read. So for me, there's a little discrepancy in the story. I'm trying to understand. You were released. You were in a facility. You were then released. When you were released, this happened.
Yes.
Why did you end up getting a gun on your release?
Because I was the victim of gun violence myself. I was shot when I was 17.
Okay, so that's not going to change when you're released again. What changes you from getting a gun when you go out again because you were shot once before?
Well, now it's different because I learned from my mistakes not to be in an environment of drugs, carrying a gun, selling drugs. That's not the same person I was then. I'm not doing that now. I'll get my ass to work and do what I got to do instead of being in the streets selling drugs and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly that's what precipitated all of this event to begin with. Upon
Yes.
you, besides the fact that you ended up where did you get the gun when you came out?
From what you call it, a drug crackhead.
You bought it on the street.
Yeah, I bought it on the street basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you never had a permit for it. You could never get a permit for it, right?
Yes.
You get a record. You didn't know how to handle the gun. You know how to handle the gun. You clean it and all that stuff.
Nah.
No, so you just had a gun. God knows what could have happened. You could have ended up hurting yourself with the gun. It backfired on. But you did it. You ended up shooting 6 times. They found 6 shell casings.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how you figured you weren't going to hit anybody because you said that these folks were running at you, so you didn't know if you hit anybody. You took off and ran. You left. Bless you. Go ahead.
Bless. I hear what you said.
I said, so you fired 6 times. You didn't, you didn't just shoot the gun in the air and run away to scare them. You fired them running at you.
Yes, I was shooting the gun.
Yeah. So do you still say it was self-defense?
I would say.
I mean, that's you took responsibility. I'm assuming.
No, that's what I'm saying. That I don't consider self-defense because I should have never been there in the first place with a gun. I should have never been there selling drugs in the first place. I should have been home with my kids and my wife, taking care of my kids.
Yeah, that would have really put you out of this situation anyway.
Yes.
Couple of good things in terms of your favors of your employment work in the facility. You got some very good evaluations.
Thank you.
And that the fact that you've done the specialty in painting, which is going to probably benefit you at some point when you do get released.
Yes.
One of the concerns that I had was around your programming. I know you took anger management probably when you first came in, at one point when you were in early on in 2006.
Yeah.
But your subsequent programming after that was quite a few years later. Why was that?
Due to my time I had, they was trying to get people that was closer to leaving the programs first for they could benefit them. Now that they took time off my sentence, I was available to get them.
Also, that's when you decided to start taking your program.
No,
When
no.
did you come to the realization that you needed to kind of change your life around?
When I see my daughter crying when she came to visit me,
When was that?
that was 07.
07.
Yeah.
Because you had, quite a few tickets. Although your last one was in 07.
Yes. That was it right there.
That explains your not having any tickets beyond that.
Yes.
And how did you manage to stay out of that issue with tickets?
They start doing working, doing other programs, activities that the facility give us. And continue trying to better myself every day.
Yeah. I mean, can you share like what were some of the things that you were doing in between that time? From the time that you got that realization to 2021 when you took I think embracing fatherhood in 2021. What kinds of things were you doing in between that time?
I was most of the
Just
time
working?
I worked from 6:30 to like 6:30 in the afternoon. Most of my whole day is at work, painting and working and learning other skills over there too. That they got welding and how to sew and carpentry and stuff like that. So on my time that I don't got nothing to do in my shop, I go to the other shops and learn them skills.
So you picked up a lot of different skill sets.
Yes.
Working skill sets for yourself.
Yes.
And you utilized them as you were doing work in the facility.
Yes.
I saw some of your projects that you did.
Yes.
Those are your
Yes.
projects specifically?
Yes, that's the finished work I do.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked like it was pretty good work. So it looks like you have some real good skills that hopefully will help you when you are released.
God willing.
So talk to me about, because this was a very serious charge, right? Both of these. Have you thought about the impact of this situation on the families of these individuals?
It's every day I think about that because I would never wish this on nobody, especially on my family either. And it was something that it should have never happened.
I mean, back then you were probably a very serious kind of individual on the streets, right? You had a nickname, right?
Yeah,
What was your nickname on the street?
they call danger
Danger. Why did they
use-
call you that? Why did you pick up that nickname?
because they use my name, Daniel, and shorten it to that.
Daniel the Danger?
Yeah,
Okay. Not because you were, bad on the streets or had a rep on the streets, or
everybody in the project and stuff
they could
like
have called you
that.
Danny, they could have called you Dan, but they called you Danger. I'm trying to figure that out.
Now a few
Sounds like it's
people.
pretty serious street name for somebody.
Now people call me Dad, Danny boy. It didn't matter, but
Yeah, people knew you as Danger because that's what I read in the
Yes,
document.
yes.
They knew you as Danger. So
Yeah.
there must have been something associated with that. What was associated with that? With
I
that
don't
name?
know. I was
Ice,
never
salt,
I was never a violent person like that.
such a weird thing to have such a name. All right. So you did complete your GED, which is really positive.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a positive thing, and that will also, create some steps for you when you are released. Tell me a little bit about your support system on the outside.
I got both of my brothers, my mom's. I got my daughter that she's now 26, about to be 27. And I communicate with my aunts in Puerto Rico and stuff like that. I
You
stay
still
in contact
communicate with them
everybody.
now? You communicate
Yeah.
with them now?
Yes.
It seems as if you have some support out in the community. But
Not
yourself,
just, yeah.
not just what? You say something else?
No, I was gonna say that most of everybody's out of state.
Is it your plan to leave the state?
Yes.
Yeah, with your brother, right?
Yeah, well, in Maryland, yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the program that you've taken, because I want to just hear a little bit more about that. You're taking Good Intentions, Bad Choices, and you said that was one of the programs that was, more impactful for you, something that really impacted you and your thinking, and also your tier 2. So tell me a little bit about those two programs, a little bit more, and what really you gained from them.
Like when I was younger, I was abusing drugs and alcohol. And like I didn't understand the big impact of what drugs could do to you. So tier 2 was helping me a lot, how to think about what I was doing and what I was doing to myself, to my body, to my mind. And
And the
when,
drug you were abusing was very serious, right? PCP.
yes, and at that time I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was a regular weed with it was just wet weed. I was just smoking it till now that I got knowledge of what it is and what it do to you and how it mess up your mind and stuff like that. Now I got more clear of what it is.
That's what tier 2 helped you with.
Yes.
And how about good? I also have that you went into aftercare this past year. Are you still in aftercare?
That's the kid.
I have that you went into intensive aftercare. 2024.
You said it in your opening statement, sir.
Yeah.
That's the tier 2 or the Good Intentions, Bad Choices?
It's what comes after.
That's after
tier two.
right? It comes after tier 2.
I don't remember that.
So,
I took tier 2 twice. That's what I'm trying to say. I did it.
but
I
intensive
did
aftercare is it's a whole different thing, though, right? I mean, it's not tier 2 is tier 2. Aftercare comes after tier 2.
Well, I think aftercare was the same thing as tier 2. Or it was
What years did you take tier 2?
Yeah.
I took tier 2 07 and then I took it again.
2024.
Yeah,
Last
24.
year.
Last year.
Yes. I took it twice.
What work have you been doing around setting up your relapse plan for yourself on the outside? What work have you been doing on that?
I wrote Holly to see if she could send me a package. She just sent me a package of about the halfway houses and stuff like that, and what I could do if I get to the halfway house and stuff like that.
Well, halfway house is one thing, but I'm thinking more around substance abuse, relapse prevention, and have you contacted CCAR? Do you know about CCAR?
I don't know nothing about, like, all this came at the last minute because, like I was saying, I was doing 60 years, so now I'm doing 37, and I get a chance for release. So now it's just everything just falling in place.
If after having taken tier 2, you weren't
Oh, yeah,
CCAR, a recovery coach,
You have a relapse prevention.
relapse,
plan,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah, I got a plan when I get out of going to find me a sponsor and finding me the closest AA program that I could go to and volunteer in it as well.
Well, Ms. Tango, it would be good if you did that in advance of you going out. if you began to set that up before going out, so you're not finding yourself in any kind of stressful situation on the outside and not having those support systems set up for yourself already. So that's something you need to start working on while you're there now, not afterwards.
But
You
if
know
I
what I
was
mean?
going, if I was going to get released to Maryland, I would have started doing the plans over there. But I don't know.
I probably should even do it before going to Maryland, because that's even more of an issue. Right?
All right.
I mean, I think those plans need to be done in advance of coming out, and set up so that when you're out there and you already know where you're going to be going, who you're going to be contacting, what agency you're going to be working with. And you have a tablet.
Yeah.
It should help you, do some of those things. And if you can't connect with somebody in Maryland, you can connect with CCAR or somebody here to begin to set that up for you. Not to think about doing it when you get there. You want to have as much prepared before you release, not after. Right?
Yeah.
So that's, it's kind of a slight concern for me, because I think that needs to be put in place before even coming out. Anything else, any other programming that you think you could be taking that could help you out even more? Because your anger management, you took a while back.
Yes, that was 07 too.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Maybe something you should take a refresher in, or get back involved in that, just to kind of make sure that you kind of, got those programs change. They add things, they add new things, to help you out, to give you better skills at being able to handle your anger. Because it seems from your history that there's significant issues with anger. Would you agree with that?
Since 17, 18 years, I ain't been in trouble. I ain't get into no fight. I learned how to deal with my anger, how to talk through. When I get in arguments with dudes or something on the basketball side, I sit there and let everybody just relax, and then we go and talk about it and stuff like that.
Can you give an example of having used those skills?
Like on the basketball court, when I play ball, it get intense, and we get in arguments. It get to the point that dudes want to fight, but we'll wait and we'll talk about it when everybody's cool down, and then we'll we'll talk through. We talk through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to be upfront and honest with you. I mean, I'm concerned that you just recently taken programming that, although you do have a plan to go to your brother's place in Maryland, that some of the things are not set up for you right now. I think that you've gotten some really good skills to be able to get some work when you do get out. And I think you've taken some programming and you've learned some things, but I'm not sure that how ready you are at this point. I'm going to let my colleagues ask some questions and see where that takes them. And if I have any further questions, I'll come back to ask them. But I want to thank you for answering my questions, and good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Chance?
Yeah, so Mr. Santiago, I just want to take you back a little because I'm just trying to understand your mindset. So prior to your trial, you were offered 30 years if you pled guilty to murder.
Yes.
But you said no, that your defense was going to be that you were intoxicated at the time of the offense, and you wanted a 25-year sentence.
Yes, that's
and
what
they did not agree.
Yes.
So you went to trial.
Yes.
And you were acquitted of murder, but you were found guilty of the manslaughter first with a firearm and guilty of the assault first degree.
Yes.
So your total sentence at the time was actually 65 years. And then in July of 2000, they vacated it. I think I read the Connecticut General Statute was 53-202K, where it was, it's called like a sentence enhancement. And then they reduced your sentence to 60 years.
Yes,
Finally, you received a sentence modification in July of 2022. So they reduced your manslaughter from the original 40 to 37 and the assault from 20 to 15, but they made them concurrent as
yes,
opposed to consecutive,
yes,
right? So I am aware, and then in December of 2022, you applied for the commutation, which they denied because they thought your sentence of 37 years was appropriate.
yes,
So I asked those because I want to understand the period between when you took your other programs to just starting to take programs. You took the Embracing Fatherhood in 2021 and the Good Intentions, Bad Choice in Tier 2 in 2024.
yes,
So you weren't doing programs for a long period, but I read all your job assignments, and it appears that those were a priority for you because you worked in the industry as a painter and you were teaching other people to paint.
yes, yes,
Right? And then you said you have maintained your job assignments for the past 12 years. You were a unit worker and you were a chairman.
yes.
So was it your choice to choose to do the work as opposed to programs?
No, due to the time I had, they was not allowing me to do programs. They was trying to give it to guys that was closer out the door. Like now, I'm close out the door, so now they're putting in my OAP to give it to me to do them. So every time they put them in my OAP, I did them.
You know, okay. So when you were being interviewed by our parole officer, and I read, you know, what she wrote, it's apparent from the questions you were asked and the responses that you gave her that at that time you didn't express much remorse for the victims. So today I hear in your opening statement that you're expressing remorse. When did it occur to you? Because I'm assuming that I'm going back to your original sentence when you didn't want to accept it, but you never discussed or expressed any remorse at any time. But today, for the victim. So what caused you to change your mind, realizing the seriousness of your impact on the victim?
My sentence. On my sentencing,
You did.
You apologized at sentencing.
You did at sentencing.
yes,
Which one?
I did both. Even my sentence modification as well.
Right. You got a sentence modification.
And I apologize in there too.
Yeah. I was just curious when the peer was interviewing you that you didn't mention any of that.
Because she was talking to me and asking me questions, and when she asked me about the crime, she was asking me about the crime, and we moved on to the next question. She didn't give me a chance.
But the crime had an impact on the victim.
Yes.
So, you also mentioned to my colleague that you decided to change your life, not because of what you did, but because of your daughter's visit in 2007. So what was it about her visit that caused you to change how you look at your life versus what you did to the victim?
My mom's had custody of my kids, both of them, my son and my daughter. By me catching the ticket, I lost visitation, contact visitation. So when my daughter came up to see me, she wanted to hug me, and she couldn't. So she started crying, and it broke my heart seeing her cry because I already put a lot of people through pain, and putting her through it as well for my actions in here made me cry. It made my mom cry at the same time. So we were, all three of us was crying in the visiting room, and I didn't want to see that vision again of all of us crying together like that.
So what are the specific reasons why you think today that we should find you suitable?
I'm not the same 18-year-old that was running around reckless. I'm mature. I'm making better choices in my life. I know I could be a productive member of society, giving back to society. And I know I changed a lot since I've been here on these 27 years.
So I know you want to go to Maryland to your brother.
Yes,
So have you contacted your brother about what's going to happen when you get there
yes.
and what's going to happen?
He gonna help me get a job, get my credit up, go find me all the programs I need to get to, and start doing my steps I gotta get to get my life together.
So I don't know what the outcome of going to be today, but eventually when you do get released, if you do before your 37 years is up, you're gonna have a parole officer.
Yes,
So you have been out on previous releases in the community. Do you remember any of those and why you didn't do well on them?
the first one was I was like I was young. I was ignorant. I was young and ignorant.
But today you think you're educated and responsible.
Yes.
Okay, well, further questions for you here.
Okay.
Thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Santiago.
So, Mr. Santiago, I understand your relationship with your son is strained. He's angry with you.
Yes.
Okay. How are you going to fix that? Where does he live?
He live in Florida.
Okay. Are you going to make an effort to build that bridge?
Definitely.
And how will you do that?
I get in touch with him, talking to him, trying to get in touch with him and being involved around him and trying to get him over wherever I'm at. And if I could visit him, I'll go visit him and spend some time with him.
Have you ever tried writing letters to express yourself, to acknowledge the pain that he's probably feeling? Any of that?
I wrote him a couple of times, but I don't get no response from him.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. He's mad at you. You haven't
Yes.
been there for him. So, I'm asking because this is not going to be easy.
Well,
You should feel fortunate that you have contact with your daughter, but, you're going to have to persist in trying to be in your son's life. And you're going to
Yes.
have to make amends for not being there, right?
Yes.
Okay. So where does your daughter live?
In Florida too.
Okay. So you've, as you said, held a job for a long time. Do you have any money saved?
Yes.
Great. Okay. You never had a job on the outside. You were just
Never.
selling drugs.
Yes.
And you were selling crack cocaine.
Yes.
So you were, that wasn't a drug you ever used, right?
I never used that.
Okay. So the scenario is, sir, that you were profiting, you were lining your pockets off of people suffering with an addiction to a very difficult substance to beat, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in a way, you were exploiting their addiction
Yes.
by selling it and causing harm to those who love them. Their
Yes.
kids who needed the food for money or the money for food and so forth.
Yes.
So I'm bringing this up because you referred to these people suffering with an addiction as crackheads. Do you hear how utterly disrespectful that is to another human being?
Yes. And I apologize for that because I'm a little bit nervous, and that's the first thing that came out of my mouth when it shouldn't.
Okay, but you do realize that it is
Yes.
offensive,
Yes.
especially from somebody who is instrumental in keeping them addicted to that substance. You.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just I heard it and I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, but it's not just about the language, it's about how we think about people. And these are people suffering with an addiction, and you're using a disparaging slang expression to dehumanize them. And that's a problem because you helped create their problem by selling them the drugs. Drugs you weren't even using to support your own habit. You were just using because you weren't willing to hold down an actual job.
Yes.
And you were 18 and a half when you committed this crime. Many of us got jobs at 16 and have worked ever since. So, I'm just putting it out there. I know we had different backgrounds, but it was your choice, the series of choices. So you only have the one brother, right?
I got two.
Oh, you have two. Okay. So the brother that you're going to sponsor to, is he the one that was behind all the trouble you were getting into in the community?
No, the other one.
So what's the brother that was what's his first name? The one that was getting you in trouble?
David.
Okay.
David.
All right. So you're going to Ernesto. Did David ever know about the position he was putting you in with the people he was dealing with who were beating you up because they were trying to get to him?
At that time, I told him about it, but
Okay. So you didn't have anybody looking out for you. Are both of your brothers older than you?
yes.
So you were in Cheshire, then McDougall, and back to Cheshire, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm happy for you that you have life goals. This auto body shop sounds great. You know, the way people are driving nowadays, you know, the accidents are all over the place. So there's a lot of work for people who are going to fix cars. Are you going to be able to use your painting skills as part of the auto body? Is that some of the work that you're going to do?
Yes, yes,
All right. But you're going to go to your brother's and you're going to work in a junkyard.
yes, for the meantime,
Okay.
until I get myself
All right.
together.
Have you ever sat down and written out like the steps to getting to that goal?
Yes,
Okay, so in terms of loans and in terms of
yes,
having a business plan and all of that. Okay, because you can't jump from junkyard to auto body shop owner.
Oh, no,
There are a lot of
yes.
steps in between.
yes,
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure you appreciate that. You know, there are a lot of small goals make up to the big goal. Okay. You know, I'm impressed with the jobs that you've had in the facility. And I get the timing with the programs. But one thing that really stood out for me is that you had alternatives to violence on your OAP.
yes,
And in June of last year, you asked for it to be removed. Why?
when?
June of 12th of 2024, you signed a revision form asking for alternatives to violence to be removed.
Oh, yes, I did. And then
Why?
they put it back because they said that it should have never been in my OAP. So I talked to the lady. She said, yes, you should have never been in your OAP. It's supposed to be a volunteer program. And then
It is on a lot of people's OAPs. So, like, if they're going to offer you a program, why would you say no? Is it because you were coming before us today? You knew that it was upcoming and you didn't want to look like you had a program you didn't finish?
yes,
Okay. You know, I appreciate your honesty, but you know what that means to me? Manipulative. I'd rather you come before us with a program on your OEP you hadn't been able to get into yet than doing an end run to get it removed from your OAP so you wouldn't look bad. Do you see the difference?
I understand.
Yeah, because yeah, you took anger management back in 2006. You know, any program, you can benefit from any program. And, you know, that could have been a good one. So what did you learn from Tier 2 about the substance PCP?
How they mess with your brain and how it don't let you think right, how it slows your brain down.
Well, I want you to know that it causes permanent damage to the structure of your brain.
Yes.
And your brain cannot recover from the damage. So it's literally like taking an ice cream scoop and scooping out parts of your brain that are gone forever. And the important thing to know about the drug, and anybody who's listening, we don't know yet what the impact is as you age. Whether there's a strong connection to dementia and Alzheimer's and other brain diseases based on the brain's exposure to that toxic substance. So it's just, when I hear that people made a habit of that drug, it concerns me immensely because it is so destructive. Okay. Last question. What do you understand? What do you understand about AA?
AA is an addiction of people that need help and need help to recover from the addiction. And somebody that is abusing drugs and alcohol as well.
Because there's Narcotics Anonymous and there's Alcoholics Anonymous. And honestly, with your history, you can go to both.
Yes.
But what I'm asking is because has your experience with NA and AA to this point just been sitting in meetings?
Just going to meetings and listening and stuff like that and learning from
Okay,
others.
so it's hearing outside speakers, perhaps?
Yes, they come to the
Okay.
facility.
All right. Do you understand that there are different kinds of AA meetings and NA meetings?
Not really.
Okay, so throughout every community in Connecticut, and I'm sure in Maryland, because it's national, meetings are held in churches, in firehouses, in community settings. And some are speaker meetings where someone is identified ahead of time to share their story and their recovery. There are all men meetings, if you feel more comfortable in the company of just men. There are step meetings. And that means that the meeting is focused on working on the 12 steps. Have you heard of the 12 steps?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, the whole tenet, the whole structure of AA and NA is based on the 12 steps. So it's the way that you work on yourself and your recovery. And it's, you know, accepting powerlessness, it's making amends. There are all these different ways that you can live your recovery and acknowledge the harm that you did with your addiction to those who love you and your community. And, you know, deepen the commitment within yourself to living clean and sober. So what happens when you get to step 12?
Continue. It don't stop.
You start all over again.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Have you done any step work?
I ain't been using no drugs or abusing no alcohol here. So I
So
just
do
went
you-
on.
Do you
Uh-huh.
think you have a problem with addiction?
Yes. I always gonna
Okay.
be.
All
I
right.
always gonna need help with stuff like that.
Okay.
And
So a lot of people who used to use drugs are part of that recovery community in AA and NA. And they continue not to use because they have the supports of a network of people who know what it's like to struggle with an addiction and to make the decision every day, sometimes every hour of every day, to live in recovery. And I hope that you will find for yourself a recovery community wherever it is you decide to live.
all right, thank you.
You know, I'm happy for you that you've been clean and sober, but addiction is still a relevant issue in your life, Mr. Santiago.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to turn the hearing over at this point to the Office of Victim Services. Ms. Vasquez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. I do have the sister of the deceased victim here on the phone with me, and she would like to address the board members. This will be your opportunity to address the board members and only the board members, and you may begin.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Barrett Applewhite, sister. I have my daughter, his niece. Good afternoon to the board.
Good afternoon.
My heart still hurts every day. My mom went to her grave hurting behind Mr. Santiago's action. It's really hard to listen to this man talk, and he gets to talk to his mother. He gets to talk to his daughter. My niece can't talk to her father. He can't see her grow up. He has grandchildren that he would never see. Let my daughter speak now because my heart is hurting. Sorry about that. Hi, board. My name is Mandoo. I'm Barrett's Applewhite niece. I remember when I was 10 years old when we got that call. We never celebrate Thanksgiving anymore. 27 years because of that tragic of that day. My cousins, his kids, that he never wrote to them or apologized or even acknowledged them to let them know that he was sorry that he took their father's life of jealousy. For a person to harm another person, to murder them, that's wrong. He should sit there and finish doing the rest of his time because he should have never got anything taken off. My family ain't never been right since that day. Never. And it's sad to say that we have to say this to a person, but he deserved to sit in there. Ain't no changing. Taking drugs like that, you took that drug to make yourself, to amp yourself up to murder somebody. You sat there and you waited in that bush for my uncle to get out the truck. You took an innocent life for no reason. There is no excuse for that. No excuse. It's sad to say that your daughter's suffering, but guess what? His kids are suffering as well. My grandmother suffered as well. She had to bury her youngest child. Her youngest child. He was supposed to have been burying my grandmother, but she had to bury her son, her baby boy. And his kids suffer every day. You know where they have to bring their kids to go see their grandfather in the graveyard. They have to introduce their kids. This is your grandfather. This is his grave. They looking at a tombstone. Every Thanksgiving, no celebration. Thanksgiving is supposed to be a holiday where you thankful. You see all your family members. You sit down, y'all eat together. But we don't have that no more. 27 years ago, it's gone. As me, I would not let him out. He shouldn't take nothing off. I don't care about all them programs. He should have been doing that when he was out, when he was 18 years old. His actions was terrible. There's no need for even him to keep coming up for board, for parole, or for anything. It should be automatically denied. There's nobody ever going to change. You murdered somebody, and then you want to keep making up a whole nother story until you tell the truth. The truth will set you free. But you lie and you keep denying everything. You saying about your family, but what about our family? You ain't never write our family and apologize or anything. You never wrote to none of his kids and apologized for taking their father away from them. I was 10 years old when my grandmother got that call. 10 years old, and I am 37 today. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Like it was yesterday. I don't care how many programs he done did, he would never change. Because if he get out, all he gonna do is go right back to the drugs because the drugs is always on the street. There is no changing. He should not be released. He should not have anything taken off. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your input. Ms. Vasquez, if you have the opportunity to explain to the victim's family that DOC would prohibit Mr. Santiago from having any contact and writing such a letter of remorse, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. I can do that, Madam Chair. Thank you. This is all that I have for this particular case.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. As I previously indicated on the record, the state's attorney's office is not present today for today's proceedings. So we'll resume and offer Attorney Mortimer an opportunity to make any final remarks or statements. You may do so now.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the board. My name is James Mortimer. I have the privilege of being assigned counsel for Mr. Santiago today. Obviously, I heard from Mr. Applewhite's family, and I certainly would like to express my remorse both for their loss as well as the continued trauma of experiencing proceedings like these. I certainly understand the difficulties in how taxing these experiences are. Mr. Santiago has been now incarcerated for over 27 years following the offense that Danny committed when he was 18 years old. He appears before this board, a grown man, a father, now a grandfather. He'll be turning 46 years old next month. He spent his entire adult life incarcerated. By way of Public Act 23169, Mr. Santiago became parole eligible obviously 4 years ago. And just briefly by way of background, I've had the privilege of knowing Mr. Santiago for 7 going on 8 years now at this juncture. And over these years, I've certainly had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Santiago, get to know his family, his brothers, his daughter Heavenly, who I believe are all watching here today. And during the course of my preparations for this proceeding, I was taking a look through Mr. Santiago's older files. And I saw Mr. Santiago described by one of his prior attorneys, Ted Koch, as a jolly teddy bear. And I've found some degree of humor in that because that is precisely kind of the disposition and the assessment I had made of Daniel when I first met him years ago. And this is because Daniel has a kind and gentle disposition about him. When you speak with him, his calm demeanor, but also a kind of youthful optimism and kind of his approach to the world. In more serious conversations with Mr. Santiago over the years, I've come to understand that his faith is deep-rooted faith in Christianity. It's kind of shining through in that optimism. He's someone that's deeply Christian, and his faith has largely shaped the individual that sits before you here today. Mr. Santiago is no orator or great writer. He's struggled greatly with respect to his underlying elementary, middle, high school years till he ultimately dropped out. And I believe, as Dr. Lopez had noted in his assessment of Mr. Santiago, perceptive learning disabilities. When Mr. Santiago entered the correctional system, he could not read, he could not write. He still, to some degree, struggles with reading and writing. Mr. Santiago spent an immense period of time trying to prepare something to read to this board, and it was not without difficulty. Mr. Santiago, instead of continuing on with his education, and that was ultimately became a possibility through the Pell Grant program some years ago, chose instead to remain working. Long, arduous shifts in industries where he spent for a significant period of time. But I certainly wouldn't want the board to confuse his difficulties in speaking, his nervousness, his difficulties in writing as a lack of thoughtfulness and a lack of consideration with respect to the events that brought him here in his development over the course of the past 27 years. Daniel has been deeply and consistently remorseful with respect to his conduct back in November of 1997. I don't think a day has gone by that Daniel has not given a great degree of thought, both to Mr. Applewhite's family, as well as Mr. Ibsher and his family, for the harm and the consequences that Daniel's decisions brought about that day. Daniel clearly wishes he could go back on 27 years and relive in the events of that day, having made different decisions. The obvious consequence of this consequences of this conduct were far-reaching, affecting Mr. Santiago's family, Mr. Applewhite's family, Mr. Ibsher's family, the community. Daniel does recognize that. And during our conversations about his conduct and what led to that point and what transpired thereafter, Daniel certainly shed his tears over the years in his discussions with me. And in these conversations, Daniel apologizes for what he terms leaking during addressing the more kinds of emotional moments or aspects of his situation. But I just would like the board to understand that when Mr. Santiago, both in the streets and when he entered the prison system, he was not born into an opportunity with a traditional childhood, traditional norms. Mr. Santiago was not positioned in a manner which he could be expressive of his emotions, evidence perceived weaknesses. It was dangerous. It was dangerous in the streets. It was dangerous in prison in the 1990s. Mr. Santiago entered the Department of Corrections when offender accountability plans didn't exist. He did take steps to engage in positive and productive behavior programming when he could. He certainly enrolled in vocational training and then ultimately the industries and professional work as soon as practicable. And he's proud of the work he has done. He has reason to be. Each one of the voluminous staff reports that we had submitted in conjunction with with my memorandum, I submitted evidences. He's good at what he does. He's good at working with other individuals. He's good at training younger inmates. Mr. Santiago was born into a life where he was molded to deal drugs. As one of the reports that was submitted in Dr. Lopez's assessment of Mr. Santiago's evidences, Mr. Santiago was put in a position where he was watching his parents package and run drugs and seeing the successful consequences of that when he was a child. This is not the kind of traditional norms where we would typically expect someone to graduate from high school successfully and go into the productive workforce. He was being shown by everyone around him, this is how you get by, and you get it by dealing in narcotics. But Danny's now been sober for decades. Of course, he had his own struggles with respect to alcohol, with respect to marijuana use, and obviously PCP use, which I suspect have had some, as Remember Turner pointed out earlier, I think some significant consequences cognitively for Mr. Santiago through the course of his early development and even into this future. And the board's absolutely right that is not something that can be undone. And Mr. Santiago certainly recognizes that. And in the pursuit of his own sobriety, I certainly had occasions to discuss that with younger individuals he works with in terms of the ultimate price you pay for this kind of lifestyle. So what I thought is really striking with respect to Mr. Santiago's case particularly, and it's certainly something that I've seen on occasion before, but the kinds of contrast in Mr. Santiago's situations really striking. And that's when we look at the first 20 years of Mr. Santiago's life. He's dealing with what Dr. Lopez described as an indoctrination into the street life and into narcotics, from being teased, bullied, beaten, shot, chased down in the streets, just chaos and trauma in his earlier years, then drug and alcohol dependency to cope with. And obviously, Mr. Santiago himself started a family as a very much a child himself, dropping out of high school at 9th grade to try to make ends meet and get by in the manner in which he knew. But when we look at the last 20 years, compare that to the last 20 years of Daniel's life, we're looking at what Dr. Lopez had noted as evident patience and responsibility that Mr. Santiago's exhibited over the past couple of decades. No physical altercations, no threats, no disobedience, no alcohol dependency, no marijuana use. And certainly, as the board's aware, these are opportunities available to Mr. Santiago here. He could have made very different choices over the last 20 years, but chose instead to stick with his recovery and proceed in a manner he feels most conducive to his future well-being, and also setting examples for his children. And that is certainly one of the more emotional moments that I've had with Mr. Santiago in discussing himself and his situation is the guilt Mr. Santiago feels, obviously for what occurred 27 years ago, but in the absence from his own presence from his children's lives and kind of the inability to assist them in making different choices. He's limited in his ability to role model for them here. He can choose to be sober, but kids are thinking, well, you're incarcerated. How difficult is that be? Could that be? Not really understanding the kinds of struggles individuals experience while incarcerated. So that has certainly been a source of difficulty for Mr. Santiago over the years. But time on and time again, Mr. Santiago has made the right decision. Now, the board asked Mr. Santiago to provide an example of kind of how he's dealt with confrontation and in a different manner since he's been incarcerated. And Mr. Santiago has difficulty answering questions, but some time ago I had been discussing just this with Mr. Santiago, and he had explained to me probably somewhere in the vicinity of 23 years ago, or maybe 13 years ago, would have been more recent. Mr. Santiago was actually incarcerated with a close friend of Mr. Applewhite's, who had obviously older than Mr. Santiago, bigger than Mr. Santiago, here at McDougal. So I would think it was 2009 or so. But I approached Mr. Santiago and said, "You killed my boy," and got in his face, and there could have been a very serious issue there. But Mr. Santiago walked it back. He sat down with the gentleman, he talked it through with the gentleman, and they lived together harmoniously, maybe not best of friends by any means, but harmoniously and productively with one another until that individual was ultimately transferred to a lower level institution some years later. But Mr. Santiago, so it's not just in a basketball court where Mr. Santiago is diffused and dealt with things differently, but on a daily basis with respect to how he lives his life here. Mr. Santiago, through his hard work, through his remaining compliant with all the conditions of the confinement, is the respect that he shares with staff and the respect that they afford him. He's really exemplified the correctional aspect of incarceration over these last 2 decades. He was born into the world where he was afforded no real chance. When he had no expectation of release in his natural lifetime, Mr. Santiago made a decision to live a very different and very more productive life over the course of these last 27 years. So based on the information that we submit to the board, I would submit that Mr. Santiago has clearly demonstrated that he'll live and remain at liberty in society without violating the law. He's lived and remained in here for 20 years without disobeying an order. The benefits to society, as well as Mr. Santiago, would clearly be greater than his continued incarceration, because at the end of the day, continued incarceration has very little more to offer Mr. Santiago, and he has a great deal more to offer the world than he did 27 years ago. And certainly, through the course of his conduct, through his employment, through his programming, Mr. Santiago has also indicated that he's substantially rehabilitated from the danger that he was 27 years ago. Regardless how long Mr. Santiago spends in prison, he can't undo his actions, but he's going to live under the weight of wishing that he could. He has a home to go to, he has a family to go to, they're waiting for him, they're ready and willing to provide support. Obviously, if any issue arises with respect to such, Mr. Santiago is certainly willing to go to a halfway house in the Bridgeport or Haven area. He's someone that has proved that he can stand on his own 2 feet. So when we're discussing his reentry plan and kind of network for a recovery network, this is something that's been a little bit amorphous for Mr. Santiago because he doesn't truly understand yet what his options are. If he goes to Maryland, if he's discharged to Maryland, his family members that are going to help him and put him in contact with individuals in the recovery networks so that he has a foundation there. If he remains in the Connecticut area in a halfway house, he has certainly numerous individuals that he's been incarcerated with and that have since transitioned successfully into the community to assist him with respect to recovery locally in Connecticut, as well as having reached out to individuals like Holly Wasilewski, he has contacts, and obviously I will do whatever I can to ensure Mr. Santiago has the resources he needs to successfully reintegrate and be successful in his recovery. So ultimately, we would respectfully request that the Senate Board grant Mr. Santiago parole, the grace of parole. Little purpose would be served by his continued incarceration at this juncture. After nearly 3 decades of incarceration, he has more to offer the world and his family. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, if you'll give us just a few minutes, we're going to discuss and make our decision. Mr. Rodriguez.
It's so difficult. First, I want to let the victims know I appreciate their coming on and sharing with us their emotional losses. I have a sense of understanding that loss. I know it's very, very hard for them. Be very difficult for them. Having said that, early in the statement, Mr. Santiago has had his sentence reduced already 23 years. He is now having the opportunity to be able to be released discretionary parole. He has done some really good things while in there, even though they weren't all programming when he first started. And again, I understand that he was given a long term, so he couldn't get the program initially. He has taken some program early on. He took the anger management course, but I think he probably could benefit from something now. His embracing fatherhood is good intentions, bad choice. He had a chance to speak on that and talk about that, kind of what he got from that programming. He was 18 years old when this happened. A young man from the streets with a nickname like Danger, which kind of leads me to believe that there were other things going on at that particular point in time. He's developed some really very good skills while in the facilities. He's done a lot of his evaluations have all been excellent, very good. I didn't find anything that we shared that not a positive response to his work ethic and his skills and his abilities. He's taught while in the facility. He's taught other individuals to have a trade, to be able to have a trade that I think could be very, very successful for him when he is released. He's had no tickets for the last 18 years, almost
17
years. Although there was some apology early on in the transcripts around having done this offense, and in fact apologized very much during his opening statement at this point.
So
yeah. He has a sponsor with his brother in Maryland, does not intend to stay here. He will have 8 years of supervision if he's released today to help him out. It was not, I thought it hurt him more to not take the alternatives to violence, especially when he had the opportunity to take it, and to some degree was not upfront about it. And that had some effect. I'm leaning toward granting him discretionary parole today. I would like to hear from my colleagues in terms of what they feel. I do have some concerns around a relapse plan, but I think he's working with Holly Wasilewski, who does have some contacts and some information. And if he has to go to halfway house early on, he can begin to kind of do some of that work there. So kind of that's where I'm leaning at this particular point, Madam Chair.
thank you, sir. Ms. Chance?
Mr. Santiago, despite the fact that he was verbally able to maneuver his way to get his sentence down to 37 years, I think one thing that stood out for me was the fact that he had difficulty, learning how to read. But he did persevere and obtain his GED. Concerned when he had the alternative to violence program removed, and probably could have redone anger management. but understanding where he's coming from, making the choice to expend his time doing the vocational programs, I think is positive for Mr. Santiago. He has developed very good job skills that he can, go in the community and get a job. Of concern was, his drug score. And he did take tier 2. I was a little bit concerned when he was asked about meetings, which he wasn't involved in, but he does understand some of the concepts. So I think overall he needs to spend quite a bit more time focusing on that, because I know he's been away for so long. It's easy, you go back in the community and, marijuana is there. Hopefully he will have a stronghold on that, knowing that he cannot touch that, and focus on what it is that he needs to do to get his life back together. So I think just overall for today, I do express remorse for the victim's family. I heard everything they said, and it pains me to know that they can no longer celebrate Thanksgiving, because we experienced that in my family. In moving on, I think it would be helpful to Mr. Santiago if he goes out on a discretionary parole, as opposed to leaving him there and then having him go to the streets. So I would be in favor of discretionary today.
I will be voting for Mr. Santiago to go out to discretionary parole. It's taken a major turn in his life from the upbringing that brought him to the circumstances of the day that he shot and killed the victim and injured the other party. I think what really made a difference for me today was his acknowledgement that this really wasn't self-defense. He might have been afraid, but he wasn't in danger. And I think he understood that the jury didn't buy that either. And that was offered at trial. So I think in the interest of public safety, and the reason that we have this particular statute passed in 2023, taking into consideration all of the factors of youth and brain development, I think Mr. Santiago has done a remarkable job to turn his life around, to acquire skills, insights, and a plan for his success when he's back in the community. So at this point, Mr. Rodriguez, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay. I have no alcohol, parole to Maryland with halfway house if needed, and no contact with the family of the deceased BA and the victim MI. Do you have anything to add? No. Okay. So in the matter of Daniel Santiago, inmate number 250357, there's a motion to grant parole on or after today's date of January 24th, 2025, with the following conditions for your supervision. Here's your parole to the state of Maryland with a halfway house placement here in Connecticut if needed. You're not to consume any alcoholic beverages. You're to have no contact with the family of the deceased, initials BA, and no contact with the other victim, initials MI. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Mr. Santiago. Please go out and do good.
Thank you for the appreciation. I appreciate you.
Thank you, members of the board.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, and they end up granting him, and I looked him up before doing the unpacking, and he is still out, so he hasn't gotten revoked. Again, this hearing happened 1/24/2025. I'm recording it July 10th, 2025. So he's still out. And what can you say about this case? The first question I have, and I double checked this in case I somehow missed it, but my first question was, where was the ADA? They show up to these Act 23169 hearings. This is the first hearing where I haven't seen them show up, and I really am confused about that. I thought it was mandatory to have an ADA show up for these 23169 hearings, and I am very curious about that. Now, if I somehow missed it, and you're saying, Mandoo, you spazzed out on that, let me know in the comment section. But I did listen to it a second time. I went to the victim impact statement, and I didn't hear it. And you know, I do multitask when I do these hearings. It's only way to get the time in, right? So I am listening to a hearing while I'm doing something else. But I did come back to double check. I didn't see it. But I am so doubtful about that I have to spend a minute wasting my time talking about it. You know, it's interesting how they challenged him on having the nickname Danger. That actually was part of his appeal. He did win an appeal that made him have a new trial. I guess they found it unfair to use the nickname Danger. I don't know. I guess, an interesting argument. But it was, I like how the parole board kind of called him out on certain lies. You know, they caught him in the lie of lying about why he wanted to cancel certain of his programs, right? Did you see it there? How they said, well, we saw you write that you wanted it taken off as a requirement, and didn't you just do that because you didn't want to show up to the parole board needing to take programs? And here's what I thought was hilarious is that now he says, yeah, he's caught in the lie already. He already showed up with the strategy of lying. He's caught in the lie. He's caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And then the parole board, when they catch him, instead of saying, well, isn't that they say, well, I'm glad you're being honest. And it's like, what? No, he wasn't being honest. He was caught. His hand's in the cookie jar. He did at least a smart thing by saying, yeah, that is why I did that. I tried to get it off because I knew that I didn't finish it. And instead of making him like, okay, we'll parole you on condition of completing these programs, which they have the ability to do, they actually reward him by saying, you don't need to take it. Right? You can't make this stuff up. It's just bizarre to me. It really is bizarre. Like, I feel like he still has the criminal mind, the criminal thinking, and the way he handled this parole hearing. It seemed, again, with his written statement, not maybe remembering what he even wrote in it right off at the beginning, being caught off guard with the first questions that they were asking him. And then the victims get re-victimized. So let's read some of this. And this was Sir Richard, thank you. This is before Lady Holly started chipping in. So the jury reasonably could have found the following facts. On November 26, 1997, the victim's brother Craig saw the victim's Barrett and the defendants having a few words outside of an apartment building. About 1 week earlier, Applewhite had fronted the defendant Pepsi to sell, and the defendant had agreed to pay him $500 after he sold the Pepsi. Oh, on that number too, I love how she called him out. How he called those people crackheads. That was nuts. Can you imagine all these years later to still do that? You're a dealer. You're making them crackheads, and you show up to your parole hearing and you call them crackheads. That was messed up. I mean, it just goes, again, his criminal thinking. This is not, in my opinion, it was wrong. It's twisted. It's not a good look. And Applewhite, the defendant, soon went to their separate ways. Afterward, Applewhite and Pitts, the defendant, afterward, Applewhite told Pitts that the defendant was crazy and that he did not know what was wrong with him, but he did not give any details. That evening, Applewhite and and Stephen Gromes drove to visit Jessica and Maureen Jackson. After a while, they decided to take Applewhite and a 2-year-old child who was visiting Jackson to the child's home on Franklin Avenue to drop off Gonzalez's friend at her house, and then to drive to Massachusetts to purchase liquor. They entered Lincoln Navigator, a sport utility vehicle that was parked in front of the building, and they drove. Applewhite sat in front passenger seat, and Gomes, Castro, Gonzalez, and Gonzalez's cousin Jennifer Collins sat in the back seat. As they drove away from the building and proceeded along with Wandsworth Street, Applewhite received a call on his cellular telephone and informed them that they had forgotten to bring a 2-year-old child with them. Ipsher thereupon backed up the vehicle all the way to the street and parked Jackson, brought the child downstairs to the vehicle to put on Gomes' lap. At about the same time, the defendant, wearing dark pants and a black hooded sweatshirt with the hood up, crossed Waldsworth Street and walked up to the parked vehicle. He looked in front of the passenger window directly at Applewhite and started talking junk, saying, "What? What?" Applewhite responded, "What's your problem?" and asked why the defendant had approached the vehicle. Applewhite then said to the others, "Let me see what's wrong with that expletive." Applewhite opened the door and stepped out of the vehicle to the sidewalk. It is funny how sometimes they include the expletive and sometimes they don't. Oftentimes they include it, right? More often than not. He told the defendant that he was acting as if they had backed up the vehicle because of him, but that was not the case. He also told the defendant that he had no problem with him. The defendant, still facing Applewhite, moved towards the rear of the vehicle, saying, "What? What?" Applewhite followed the defendant, reiterating that they had not backed up because of him. I have no. What am I reading? What is this? Okay. And appeared agitated, upset, and dazed. At that time, Applewhite and the defendant were standing about 8 to 10 feet apart, although neither Applewhite nor Ipsher moved toward the defendant. He suddenly pulled out a black automatic handgun from his sweatshirt and began shooting at Applewhite. Okay, so let's just clear this out. The defendant, however, kept saying what, and appeared to be agitated and upset and dazed. At that time, Applewhite and the defendant were standing about 8 to 10 feet apart. Although neither Applewhite nor Ipsher moved towards the defendant, he suddenly pulled out a black automatic handgun from his sweatshirt pocket and began shooting at Applewhite because he saw Applewhite reach into his waist. Applewhite immediately turned away from the defendant and started to run to the building, but he was shot in the back. Well, this sounds like a clear self-defense case, right? Ipsher told the defendant that he was crazy, and the defendant swiveled towards Ipsher and shot him, hitting him in the leg as he was running through. Remember, because he killed someone and wounded someone, running through the alley in the parking lot next to the building. In total, the defendant fired 6 or 7 shots in rapid succession. After the defendant's automatic gun clicked twice, the defendant turned and ran across the street and along a pathway towards a public housing project. In the meantime, Gomes, concerned about the safety of the woman and the child, got into the driver's seat of the vehicle and sped off. They dropped off Castro at the house, called the police, and drove Franklin Avenue to drop off the child. While on Franklin Avenue, police stopped and searched the vehicle and questioned the remaining passengers. So did he do this all in front of a child too? Is that what it is? The police officers who had arrived at the crime scene tried to gather information from the victims and witnesses concerning the shooting. At the scene, he identified the shooter as Danger by running that alias through a computer, and by the process of elimination, the police were able to identify the defendant as a possible suspect. It's interesting. By using his alias, that alias is in their database, and yet they weren't allowed to use that in court. And again, he denied that being his alias at his parole hearing. This guy needed to own up to his crimes more before getting paroled, in my opinion. Thereafter, Castro all separately identified the defendant from the photographic array. On November 27, 1997, the police obtained a warrant for the defendant's arrest and sent wanted flyers to the news media. On December 1st, 1997, the defendant turned himself into the Hartford police. He agreed to be interviewed and gave a statement to the police admitting that he shot Applewhite and Ipsher, but claiming that it was in self-defense. Thereafter, the defendant was arrested. After a jury trial, the defendant was convicted of manslaughter in the first degree with a firearm and assault in the first degree, and he was sentenced to total effective of 60 years imprisonment. This appeal followed. So it's interesting that the jury didn't want to, they wanted to give him the lesser charge. You know, maybe they thought it was a dispute. I guess he had a guy lent him money. Maybe even though he shot him in the back. But the judge, it seems like, was like, yeah, I'm going to put you away for 60 years. It was probably the maximum. I'll put the links in the description. I know it was just a weird part of the unpacking there. But there you have it. This is not a hearing I agreed with. I just thought it was a bad hearing. It did not check those boxes of like those people who it seems like they deserve it. You know what I mean? And you're just re-victimizing the victims. But you tell me, what do you think? Think you served enough time? You think he'll be okay? And with that, I'll let you go.
Never. And it's sad to say that we have to say this to a person, but he deserved to sit in there. Ain't no changing. You sat there and you waited in that bush for my uncle to get out the truck. You took an innocent life for no reason. There is no excuse for that. No excuse. It's sad to say that your daughter's suffering, but guess what? His kids are suffering as well. My grandmother suffered as well. She had to bury her youngest child